Chapter 5.8, Pleasure and Pain, Emotions. 23, Pleasure and Pain. We have seen in the previous chapters that the mind has an ability to perceive. It organizes the experiences gained via external and internal senses into knowledge. This is an evolutionary process and is biased towards a certain goal, namely the sustenance of the mind. Anything that is unnecessary for the existence of the mind is simply not organized or is organized very weakly. The goal of the mind to remain in existence is auto set. It is by necessity because any other goals that may appear are destroyed sooner or later by the impermanence, continuous change, the experiencing. The goal biases the perception process and almost all actions of the mind and results in a reward or punishment system that rewards, enhances favorable perceptions or actions and punishes, diminishes the non favorable ones. Such a system is at the core of any evolutionary algorithm, as AI or AGI programmers or researchers know very well. The rewards cause the behavior or actions or perception helpful in sustenance and preservation of the mind to repeat often and strengthen the structures, while the punishments cause the unhelpful or damaging behavior or actions or perceptions to diminish and destroys the structures that cause these or creates new structures to prevent the damages. The reward and punishment are also perceived. They are the familiar perceptions of pleasure and pain. They appear as qualia, a distinct experience that cannot be shared with others, such as the experience of seeing colors, but can only be inferred. Why is there a need to perceive the rewards and punishments as flavors of pleasure and pain? This is the same as asking why is there a need to perceive colors and why do they look like the way they look like? Or, in other words, why is red red? These are just structures, non physical ones, a result of unique experiences created to help organize the experiences, as we have seen in the case of time and space. The pleasure and pain provide a useful tool for biasing the mind towards continued existence. Their perception is a meta process that adds in their recognition and memory formation. One tends to remember the experiences that cause extreme pain or pleasure. These cause very effective learning. Pleasure and pain are complex perceptions. They modulate the ordinary perceptions, external and internal both. Tasting a sweet fruit using the sense of taste not only results in perception of the sweetness, a qualia, but is also modulated as pleasure, assigning a good reward to the perception and consequently to the action of eating the sweet fruit. The result is that one forms a tendency to eat such fruits, and it is no doubt helpful in continued existence of the mind. Pain biases the perceptions negatively, such as the sensation of hitting one's finger while hammering a nail, and consequently prohibits one's action of hitting his finger again. This also ensures the continued existence of the mind. So, the purpose of both pleasure and the pain is same, and therefore we grouped them together. Pleasure causes attraction or preference towards the stimulant, while pain causes repulsion or avoidance from anything that was painful. This is the base on which likes and dislikes are formed. These are formed very early in childhood. As we all have experienced, Likes and dislikes govern our actions much more than rational and logical thinking does. The mind not only rewards or punishes the external actions but also the internal ones. An imagination of eating a sweet fruit also produces a certain amount of pleasure. So does the memory of our mate. Similarly, visualizing oneself as being insulted by an enemy produces all the sensations of pain that an actual insult or attack would, and enforces the dislike as known as hate for him. This prevents the mind from forgetting the enemy and risking damage in future. It is all purely survival oriented. However, the mind knows no difference in internal and external stimulations of the pain and pleasures. The body and other mental programs and entities react in similar ways when the source of pleasure or pain is imagination or a memory. This makes the situation somewhat complicated because now one has the potential of inflicting internal pains on oneself via repetitive recall of an unfortunate event, or in other extreme has the potential to get lost in pleasurable fantasies or memories of pleasure causing events. The latter is not very harmful unless it goes out of control and the person loses his contact with the external world, or if such indulgence destroys his worldview in extreme ways. The pleasure and pain can take very sophisticated forms, especially in the case of human mind. So, one can take pleasure in viewing a nice painting or a movie, listening to music, reading a storybook, or just discussing events with friends. The opposite is also true. One can dislike, perceive pain when one encounters dirty places, public toilets, or selfish and cruel people on modern pop music. The most pleasurable thing for someone are the ones that satisfies his most desired needs, which, as we know, may or may not be sophisticated. The pursuit of mathematics and search for mysteries of nature is the most sophisticated pleasure one can have. These experiences, due to their purity, forms the most perfect structures in the mind, higher organization of experiences, and so receive ample rewards. The mind suffers from a sort of flaw in this business of pleasure and pain. An action or perception is pleasurable in direct proportion to its novelty and need. Once it becomes old and the needs are met, the same stimulus become neutral or sometimes turn into pain if not stopped. I say sort of because it is a natural mechanism to stop one from overdoing a pleasurable activity. Pleasure is a positive feedback loop with the action reward amplifying each other endlessly. This can easily get out of hand. So, a negative bias appears as soon as the needs are met. By making familiar or repetitive things less pleasurable, the mechanism encourages the mind to seek better stimulus or to not to depend on only one stimulus. So, it's a flaw but not a flaw. It's a feature. We see such mechanism in control systems implemented frequently. For example, if one is hungry, the need for food is the topmost priority, and one encounters a kind of painful experience, the hunger. It springs us into action like nothing else does. Eating provides the much needed nourishment for the structures of the mind, and it is rewarded with pleasure. The pleasure modulates the sense of the taste of food, and the circuits or programs that cause this action are strengthened, while memories are updated to perceiving hunger, the pain, and satisfying it, and the associated pleasure. Learning happens here. However, as soon as the stomach is full, some control programs intervene and cause the pleasure to disappear, And if one continues to eat, the same act turns painful and the food suddenly becomes repulsive. The same is also committed to memory. If one is offered the same kind of food again and again every day, then the pleasure to pain converter program, P2P in short, kicks in again and result in the person seeking new tastes, new dishes. This is a much familiar experience, and you may think that it does not deserve a description so detailed. But I took pains to mention it because it is important to know the process. The same mechanism is responsible for many of our actions, including those that cause immense suffering, such as expansion of king's kingdom to breaking of marriages. Pleasure and pain, though directly opposites, are contrived to be constant companions. Pyrrhere Charon. If you are on a path of knowledge, it becomes necessary to know the mechanism of pain and pleasures. The first and foremost thing to know is just that these are nothing but mechanisms. They are there to serve some useful purpose. They are not the end goal of your life. They support life. These were evolved during the early periods in evolutionary history of the consciousness and so deserve much less of importance than we actually give them. For most of us, our lives are nothing but seeking of pleasures and avoidance of pains. Such activities take up majority of our lifetime. Everything from sleeping to ruling a country is colored with pleasures, likes, and dislikes. These acts are not seen as they are, but as a source of pleasure, and that twists the whole pleasure out of proportions. Please see the immensity of this simple mechanism of our reptilian brains. It is the nature of the wise to resist pleasure, but the foolish to be a slave to them. Epictetus. What do the P2P programs do? Pleasure to pain converter programs do. They seem innocent, don't they? These rule you. That's what they do. We are slaves of pleasure, pain, likes, and dislikes. If that is not blowing your mind at this time, and nothing else can. Pleasures ranging from the sweet taste of mother's milk to intimate touch of one's partner form a basis of all relationships. All relations are related to pleasures except that of a teacher and student. Best friendships are a result of pleasure we get when we are in the company of our friends. Friendships come very close to teacher student relation in terms of purity. Rest of all our relations are purely pleasure based. The P2P acts even on the closest kind of relations, and therefore living with your loved ones for many years cause all the romance to disappear as one now sees the plain imperfections of the partner, and it becomes old, boring, and sometimes painful. If you are wondering what is causing your partner to dislike you more and more, and it all can be felt in their behavior, the manner in which they now touch you or call your name, etc., etc., then it is simply P2P in action. It is telling them to seek novelty, change, variety, and so non monogamous relations begin. Breakups happen because the coupling has served its purpose. This is why staying away from people you like has a positive effect. It kills P2P and renovates the pleasure programs, inciting actions such as sending love letters. Even the most committed relations suffer from P2P, where the reason for being together is sometimes not pleasure but security or financial dependency. These kind of relations break as soon as the factors enslaving the partners are removed. A relation that is not based on pleasure seeking lasts much longer as it avoids the P2P mechanism altogether. A relation based on mutual trust, respect, and unconditional love is such a relation. Of course, these are as rare as unobtainium. P2P is responsible for once jumping from a job to other job, not gaining any proficiency at all. A tedious and monotonous job is disliked by all because P2P. Running after more and more money, even if one has more than enough, is a result of pleasure seeking, and P2P because once you have a million, the pleasure you get from it goes downhill quickly, inciting you into donkey work and monkey business so that you can get 10 million because last time it was the money that gave you the everlasting pleasures, right? P2P is responsible for holding behavior, collecting useless stuff, spending money on useless stuff because the last one you bought loses its appeal within a few days. How many people know this and can kill this mechanism? Not many. Most men pursue pleasure with such breathless haste that they hurry past it. Soren Kierkegaard. P2P is the reason most people cannot excel in a particular skill, such as in art or scientific or engineering pursuits. These disciplines demand too much attention, hard work, and time. Usually, the pleasures gained initially are minuscule and the learning is often very painful, as known as the learning curve. Those who survive the initial pain inflicted upon them by the P2P find an ocean of pleasure awaiting before them. Once you master an art, it is a source of endless pleasure. But most of us do not reach there. Thanks to our ignorance about P2P, we remain ordinary. Pleasure for 1 hour, a bottle of wine. Pleasure for 1 year, a marriage. But pleasure for a lifetime, a garden. Chinese proverb. Substance addiction is a result of overstimulation of pleasure centers. Such behavior cause extreme suffering to the addict as well as to the people around him. It is difficult to get rid of these programs once they form, and often the person lives their short life enslaved by them. Substances include food, a cause of obesity, diseases, poverty, and whatnot. One might suspect that P2P fails here and the self amplification loop of pleasure works unhindered. But addictions are not without pain, as we know well. That which is escaped now is pain to come, a proverb. Another form of addiction is attachment. It appears innocent until it starts causing suffering. We will discuss the cure of all the strangeness that the reward and the punishment mechanism cause in the chapters of Inflections of the Mind. As usual, and you must have guessed, the cure consists of becoming aware of these programs and taking control of them. The question is how? Stay tuned. You are quaffing drink from 100 fountains. Whenever any of these 100 yield less, your pleasure is diminished. But when the sublime fountain gushes from within you, no longer need you steal from the other fountains. Jalaluddin Rumi.